Hey guys, it's Francie and Simone, and today I am here with Reviews by Simone. I have a book review for you. It's The Winter's Curse by Marie Rutkoski. First, I'll give you a brief synopsis on the book if you don't know what it is by now. It's set in kind of a historical, fantastic universe. So, reading it, it is literally about a girl who is born into privilege, and she lives with her father, who's like a general of an army or captain of the guard. He was one of the people who actually conquered this land of a heavily cultured people, and they enslaved the people. So it starts with her. She's about 18, and she's living in a society in which there are the haves and the have-nots. The have-nots just so happen to have absolutely nothing, including their own identity, because they are slaves. So it follows her and also the main character, a boy who is a slave who she ends up buying at an auction. And of course, because this is YA, we already know that this is obviously probably going to be a love interest, and the story ensues. If you enjoy like forbidden love, political intrigue, and a very like subtle romance or simmering romances or just subtlety in general, you'll probably really enjoy this story. So let me talk about why I rated it 4.5 to 5 stars, and also why I rate it so low as a personal preference. And then I might talk about some spoiler things at the very end, but I will let you know before it gets there. So I base it always on three things: plot, character, and world, because if those three things are authentic, your entire story is authentic, because everything else is just icing on top of the cake, and it's all based on personal preference after that, such as diction and writing style and character tropes and genre, etc., etc., etc. So let's start with character. Our main character is Kestrel. It's like the bird, Kestrel. She was a pretty solid character in herself. She's very authentic. If you prefer smarts over the bronze kind of thing, you're probably really going to enjoy her because she is extremely strategic. She likes gambling, and she also likes music. She's very interesting. As far as flaws go, she doesn't have heavy flaws because, as I said, because as I said, she's a very strategic person, and I can honestly say she got away with this because of who her father is. He's also a very strategic person, so it seems like she grew up in a household where she wasn't really allowed to have flaws. Or at least she was supposed to hide them very well and make up for them in other ways. One of her biggest flaws might be the fact that she was very guarded as a person. Clearly, her relationships with other people seem very superficial, and not in a sense of bad writing, but in a sense of what happens to someone when they're very guarded. I can see a lot of people having problems with her as a character because she was very logical, which means she was very sterile as well as a person. You probably wouldn't want to be around someone who's that strategic and that logical all the time. They almost come off as very unfriendly. But that's her as a person. We know people like that. So I can't dock points of her as a character because of that, because it was very authentic. I saw the reasons why she was that way. I saw her actions promoting that type of character style. So it was very believable. Next we have Aaron. He's the main character, and he's also the slave. The only reason why I would dock off on characters a little bit was there are certain times where he was very brassy and bold, and he's supposed to be a slave. He's supposed to be in slavery since he was very young, which means he would have adapted more to the slave life than not, depending on how he grew up as a slave. And sometimes I felt like because of his role in the book, he was very brassy, and that could have jeopardized things. However, we did have enough evidence from Kestrel's point of view that allowed him to be brassy in those moments, and that made up for him being brassy because she kind of allowed that in her presence. But I did sometimes think that he was a little much for me at times. From the beginning of the story, he comes off as someone who is very sure of himself and very confident, which I did enjoy and I did like, and it does make sense as the book goes throughout. However, sometimes I did wonder, are you allowed to be this brassy as a slave? Because, bruh, you would have got your head cut off like anybody else's house. Just saying. But anyways, overall, the characters were very authentic, and they did stick to themselves. Number 2, the plot. Now, the plot was very slow-paced. I would honestly, again, recommend this to people who like subtlety and things that simmer. It was very much based on Kestrel's point of view. You're following somebody who's very logical, and she doesn't act very much. She's born into privileged life. What else do you expect? I mean, she's not going to like pirate adventures, right? She's not a part of high espionage. She's, obviously someone who's bred. She wears lots of dresses. She goes to high society parties. She talks to like aristocrats and stuff like that all the time. So it's not like she's doing much. So a lot of the story takes place in her mind and going through the internal struggle versus the external. And I think if you are used to reading a lot of external struggles where essentially people are just doing something all the time, they're constantly fighting other people, and they have no inner word struggles, you're probably not going to like this, because this will seem really fucking slow paced to you. So I did enjoy that because it gives you a lot to reflect on. It's a lot about the grays in society. There's no true evil villain going on in the story. It's everybody plays the villain and everybody plays the good person, you know? So it's all in perspective. As far as plot goes, it was very solid. Every event leads to another, every action has a consequence, even if the consequences seem unjust or were unjust. Now, I will say that the very end of the book for me, it seemed to ask a little bit for the suspension of belief. However, I could leap and go with it because, you know, all of the other 300 something pages were there. They were solid. That's why I say 4.5 to 5 stars. As far as world building, I thought it was very spectacular, and I'll tell you why. It had a very like Roman or Greek kind of feel to it. You don't get that from page 1 or page 2. It's sprinkled out throughout the entire book. You get the feeling that these people who came in and conquered this land, the Valorians, I think, they're considered less cultured than the people they actually conquered. So it makes sense why the slaves may be a bit more bold and brassy, because they were the people on top. They were probably what we consider the 1% today. So there are little things dropped here and there through Kestrel's perspective or Aaron's perspective where we get that sense of a rich culture that's going on, and how things have been upset and how things are different and how things are adapting and molding and becoming new and different and merging. And the way everything was developed was very nice and it was very subtle. So I will say there was one instance of data dumping, but given the situation in which it happened in, it was very conversational, so I'll let it slide. But other than that, those 3 things were really solid, guys. Now I'm going to talk about the preference-wise, who I would recommend this book to and who I wouldn't recommend this book to. In my personal library, where do I put things? You know, my 5-star books, 4-star, 3-star. It would literally go to the 3-star, but only because the best way I can describe this book is like a really washed down Outlander kind of feeling. It's really fucking slow. It's like episode 1 of Highlander versus season 1 of Game of Thrones. As far as romance, especially since I've grown up a lot and I've experienced a lot, I love slow simmering romances, but I also love a slow simmering romance that gets steamy. And I mean steamy, you know, where it's just like things are at its highest tension point and that tension just snaps. You know, that's to me, that's really awesome. But you can't really do that in a YA because, you know, so I would find that people who really like fast-paced stuff, or people who like insta-love, or people who enjoy the kind of the way that tropes are done now, you probably won't like this, because it is very slow. It's more authentic, which means there's a lot of complicated feelings and complex feelings involved with love that may take the fun out of it for you. I prefer books that have political intrigue and romance, etc., and especially something where this book goes. I like them to have a lot more plot lines happening at the same time. And I'm going to cut here and say that there are going to be spoilers that come along after this, so if you have not read the book and you want to, stop. See you, subscribe. But if you have and you just want to listen to me talk about it, let's keep going. I really like the complexity and the double standard between Kestrel owning slaves and then her kind of becoming one. There are times I felt like it could have really gone into more detail and dived in depth more with it. I don't feel like we were made to feel sympathetic or one way or the other, because we did get both perspectives. So it's not like we were made to think that Aaron's evil and he's a terrible person for making other people slaves. No, I don't think so. We got his perspective. We know what his is. We got both. I did feel, however, that when Jess and Ronan, I think, they kind of survived the whole issue, and they were the only 2 people that she really liked and talked to that, you know, we cared more about than anybody else, and they survived. I felt like they probably should have died. But I still want to reiterate again, this is the perfect example of a book that is 5 stars. It's great. 4.5 to 5. It is great. It's completely developed in itself. It is a solid book. However, not all great books have to be liked. You get what I mean? I've been talking about this a lot in other videos, that, you know, you can like a great book and you can like a shit book. But that does not change the fact that one is great and one is still shit. I think this is a great book because it's authentic to itself. It doesn't have to do anything else, whether I like the way things happened or not. Think of it this way. This is a zebra. Some people might like to call it something else, like a horse with stripes or donkey with stripes, but it's still a zebra. Some people like zebras, some people don't like zebras, but it's still a fucking zebra. That's the same with great books and bad books. It is what it is, whether you like it or not. And this was a great book that I just so happened to think was, you know, on a personal preference. But I would not say that this was not a great book. I would not give it 3 stars in general because it didn't suit my preference. I feel like that would be unfair to you because then I'm telling you a lie about the book. I'm telling you the book is not quality. I'm only telling you my personal preference of the book. I know a lot of people rate that way, and it's okay. You don't have to change the way you rate. However, I do think it is important for us to make distinctions and to think about books that way because, again, as I'm going to just keep saying, greatness does not equal popularity and vice versa. So just because something is popular, like The Winter's Curse, I think was popular a while ago, it was very hugely hyped. Does it mean that that's great? No. The fact that it's a quality book that's well developed and solid means that it's a great book. Does that mean everyone should like it? No. I thought it was okay as far as a read on my personal preference, you know? But can I blame the book for that? No, that's like blaming Tim. Here comes Timmy again. That's like blaming Tim for having dry hair. It's like, that's just Tim. You can't change his dry fucking scalp. He is still a 5-star quality person, okay? If you've read The Winter's Curse, let me know what you thought about it. Let me know if you disagree or agree with whether it's a great book or not. Let me know what you thought about it personally on a preference level. Mine's a 3-star. Maybe yours is 5 or 1. I don't know. Let me know if you know of any type of books that have that slow simmering romance but get even more steamier, because that's what I want to read. I love some steamy romance. It doesn't necessarily mean there's graphic sex, but that's a plus. So as always, don't forget to subscribe or tweet me at Francine Simone with any questions or suggestions on what videos I should make, or tag me in something so I can pretend like I have friends. And happy reading. Ta for now. TTYL. What? TTYL. Ta for now. Serious though. Look at this cover. This is the worst fucking cover I've ever seen in my life. Like, it's so misleading. What do they always gotta put chicks in dresses on covers? I mean, can't you think of something else? It's a fucking fantasy novel. Also, look at the pages on this. Look at the pages on this picture. Why? I know it's supposed to make me think that I've been transported to some otherworldly place, but no, all it makes me think is it was put together by a blind man with scissors.